There's the Buddha behind me, you see?
Wonderful.
I took a picture before I left. But anyway, so there it is. So now I'm here in my usual place. All right, darlings.
Thank you, Venerable Robina. So welcome.
Happy to be here, everybody. See you all. Look at all of you. Look, it's wonderful. I'm so happy to see you all. Okay, oh, look at that. Thank you, Seven. And look at that lovely gift. My beautiful gift. Look at her with her lollies, her delicious chocolates. I can see it. Thank you. Mandela. Thank you, darling.
And we have
Hello, Matt. Oh, Matt. Matt's in Sydney in the room next to where I lived. In the centre. He's in the
That's
centre.
right. Hi,
Yes.
Venerable Robina.
And there's Afisha in Bali still. She headed off to Perth about 10 years ago and she's got stuck in Bali. I don't think she's miserable about it. Let's hope not. Hello, everybody. Hello, Faye. Happy to see you. Nana, happy to see you. Emma and Kate. Is Emma Kate or that's two or one persons? One. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay, darlings, I'm very happy to see you all. Who else is there? I've got to see. I can't see lots of you. Maria's there. Hello, darling girl. Tina, Susie's there. Okay. Good, everybody. So many people. I'm so happy. So what's the plan, Jason and Amy? What's the plan?
So we'd just like to welcome you first and thank you for giving us this teaching. And for people who know Venerable Robina or maybe haven't seen Venerable Robina teach before, the teaching that we've requested tonight is in the tradition of Lama Yeshe's talks at Christmas to his Western students. Venerable Robina has been a student and practitioner of Buddhism for over 40 years ordained. And we're fortunate that Venerable Robina is able to distill the Buddha's authentic teachings into practical things we can do every day. So our request is to have teachings on things we can do through our actions with people and all of our actions for Christmas.
Okay, so it's good. I'm happy to try that one.
Thank you.
And that 99% of the time, is it not true? That means family. Have you heard of family? It's always, I mean, the people we fight with are not the neighbors down the road. It's the family. So what does it all mean? So first of all, we were going to begin together.
Are we able to offer mandala, Venerable Robina?
Just a short one. Come on, little baby one.
This is our mandala here for you, Venerable Robina.
Just don't even say the words. We just think of offering it. We imagine this delicious offering, all of us offering to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. That's it. Done.
Thank you.
Done. That's enough. Okay. So now, okay. So, when we say Christmas, it's like an Americans. For them, it's it's Thanksgiving. They have their big deal in Thanksgiving, like about a month ago, the last something or other of November, whenever it is. That's the drama for them. And of course, it usually means family. So if it's not family, then you don't have to worry about it. It's just another day, isn't it? I mean, you don't go to see family on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or whatever it is. So what does that mean? Well, that means that there's so many approaches, because what it means is you're going to be seeing people, especially those whose womb you came out of, kind of intense connection, right? There's Rosie there. She's the mother of Jason. They seem pretty reasonable together. I'm not sure. There you go. So it means we have all this incredible history with each other. So first of all, we think about the karmic one. You ran like a magnet. Jason, at the time of conception, don't get too personal here, at the time when Rosie was wherever she was, doing whatever she was with her husband, then Jason's mind came from before, and due to strong history from the past, strong history. I mean, you can't just bump into any old Joe. You bump into people you've got history with. He ran like a magnet to that egg and sperm. So, I mean, already you come with so much good baggage, but also we know bad baggage, some long, strong history. And then you've got your siblings. And sometimes in families, I mean, it's heartbreaking to hear, some of the stories in families. Sometimes there's a schism, sort of 3 schisms, because we've got history with each other. And of course, if we don't factor in karma, we don't really know why, since we're tiny children, you just can't stand that brother, or that sister can't stand you, or you have a really strong, you're hurt easily by that one. We don't really know why. It's just, we say it's genes or whatever, but of course for the Buddha, it's all to do with your history. So what is it that causes us to suffer then? What is it that we've got? What is it that causes us to suffer? It's called attachment. I mean, this stupid little simple word, this primordial hunger within every one of us. And this is the bottom line. This is the deepest attachment of all. This attachment is more heavy than sex, drugs, rock and roll, money, you name it. And it's simple words. It's almost seems so embarrassing to say it. It's attachment to being liked. Think of it, they call it, the fancy word in Buddhist psychology is attached to reputation. That sounds a bit grand, you know, but what it means is we all want to be liked. So this is so shocking. We'll go, well, of course we do. This is normal, we will all say. So we take it as a given that a normal part of a normal person is you need to be liked. But if we look into our lives and look at this, we can see this is the cause of most of our suffering. I mean, since tiny children, since you came out of the womb, since Jason came out of the womb, you know, and his little gurgly little boy, and there's little Rosie probably looking at, ooh, isn't he cute or whatever. And one day Rosie looks cute, and so when Jason smiles, and so Jason automatically this attachment's inside his little mind, even at the time of conception. Then when mummy smiles at him, it's kind of like he figures, oh, that worked, I'll do it again. So he kicks his feet tomorrow, and then Rosie's in a bad temper tomorrow, and then Rosie hits him. Well, no wonder Jason's confused, because attachment to being liked doesn't get what it wants. We want to be liked all the time. So we should look at this. It's really quite profound. You've got to ask the question. We've got to ask the question. I wonder why we have a craving to be liked. We should question it. Don't take it for granted. You've really got to ask, why is it? Why is it there's this hunger in me for someone else, whoever it might be, in front of you, this person in front of you, why is it, and this is the better way to put it, I need their approval of whatever I said or did. Think about that. Think about that. Why would I need someone else to say, well done, Robina? Why is it not enough for myself to say, well done, Robina? But it doesn't occur to us, because this is the thing, speaking kind of technically, attachment is the main voice of this root neurosis. According to the Buddha, this root delusion, this root neurosis, this primordial, instinctive, panic-stricken grasping at a real, solid, separate me in here somewhere. Separate meaning there's me, therefore there must be other. So somehow the irony of ego, this is really what ego is. They call it ego grasping, this primordial misconception. It's rooted in fear. Its main voice is this attachment, which is this emotional hunger to kind of fill up the gaping hole, to kind of make the I feel better. So the irony of ego is we are like a half a person walking around, you know, and the stronger we have this attachment, not just attachment to sex, drugs, rock and roll and all the rest, but the deepest, most primordial one, this hunger, it's an assumption that I'm not enough. Basically, this attachment to other people liking me has to mean that I on my own am not enough. Think about it. It's logical. And Buddha kind of says you should be weeping in compassion for yourself. Of course you're enough. So the whole approach in Buddhism, and this is such a sweet saying, I love it in English, we say, you've got to become your own person. Well, this is literally what we're trying to do. We've got to become an entirely whole, complete, fulfilled, joyful, content, wise, empathetic person. That's the entire job, speaking in ordinary Australian terms, you know, of what Buddha's trying to, his methodology gets us to do that. So attachment is like this, it's like we're broken, it's like we're schizophrenic, and don't take me lightly. This sense of a miserable I here and everything else is over there. So we're constant from the second, and this is the thing about the senses. The second we wake up in the morning, because we're driven by our sensory consciousnesses, the second we wake up, there's already a feeling of me here, and then the world, quote unquote, the world is out there. And this attachment in my mind, this hunger, and why are you hungry? Because you feel you don't have enough, is always looking for something out there by definition to get and to ingest it through the five senses, to then the assumption being that then I will feel fulfilled and content. That's the attachment's job. It's a serious, serious mental problem. But because the entire universe has it, that's the very definition of Buddha of being in samsara, quote unquote, you know. But of course, in our culture, we only think you've got a problem when the attachment's severe, when it's like for drugs or sex, or you've got to jump on 17 boys a day, or you need 80 cigarettes or whatever it is. Then we think, well, you've got a problem when you're a junkie, you're an addict. But actually, technically, the more we understand attachment, it's basically, it's addiction, but it's attachment to anything. And as basically Buddha is saying, we're all junkies. It's a question of degree, that's all. It's a question of degree and a question of the object. But the deepest one, we can see it, is with human beings and with people. Yeah, with our pussycat and doggy woggy as well. You know, but usually that's a passive relationship, because as soon as the pussycat starts doing what my attachment doesn't want, we go to the vet and we say, please put it down. You know, we don't like to think it's so brutal, but that's how it is. You don't go and put down your husband. Well, you try maybe. Did you see one lady in England recently? It was they had all the police cameras. This hilarious woman. It wasn't hilarious. She just murdered her husband. But she's kind of like, I did it. He's in the kitchen. He's on the floor, and I hope he's dead. I stabbed him. Yes, I did. I did it, she said. And they kept saying, bring me my coat, I'm cold, while they were arresting her for stabbing her husband to death, you know. Anyway, it was a very funny one. In The Guardian, I saw it. But this is the thing, we've got this intense sense of being half a person. This is why look at us, we're literally going around looking for another half. I mean, it's literally what we say, isn't it? Certainly in Australia. So but because everybody does it, this is the interesting part, because everybody does it, we think it's normal. We go, well, that's normal. Of course, it's normal. But yeah, it's normal, Buddha says, we've all got it. But he has identified it as a mental illness. He says, you can be more whole than that, babe. So, but the deepest one is, of course, with the closest people. And that's usually family. And usually Christmas time is family. Not everybody, of course. So what are the approaches? What are some of the bullet points? What are some of the pieces of advice to protect us from reacting when our attachment doesn't get what it wants? Because that's the next delusion, these so-called 3 toxic emotions Buddha talks about. The root delusion is this assumption of an I in the first place. Its main voice is this emotional hunger called attachment to get what that I wants. And then the panic attack, when it doesn't get what it wants, that's called aversion. The volatile levels are called anger. The subtler internalized levels are called depression. So anger, aversion is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And that's when the problems start. You know, the shouting, the yelling, the hurt, the pain, the words. So what are some of the practices? Well, one of the most powerful ones, if we can be brave enough to do it, you've decided you're going to go to grandma's for lunch, or the sister for lunch, or whatever it might be. And you know you're kind of going to meet that particular person. You've got the dangers with that particular one. And you kind of groan, oh God, I've got to go, you know. Well, one of the things to do is you decide, yeah, I'm going to go. I'll be there 2 hours and I'm going to leave myself at the door. And you decide, this is the best one. You decide, I'm going to be there for 3 hours. I'm going to be there for them. Shut my mouth, mind my own business. Do not crave their approval of every damn thing you think and say, like a little baby girl. We're all grown-ups now. Leave yourself at the door and make a decision. I'm going to be there for 2 hours, 3 hours, and I'm going to be there for them. Let the old neurotic, smelly old uncle do what he likes. Let your mother moan and complain you don't love her enough. Let your father do what he does. Let your sisters say what they want, and you mind your own business. You leave yourself at the door. I'm there for them. And if you don't decide it, it won't happen, because old habits die hard. We know that, Then everything will change. You will appear differently to everybody, be more easygoing. Have some wine, grandma. Have this, yeah, the cake is horrible. Whatever, agree with people. Just shut up and leave yourself at the door. This is the best one, I tell you. And it's a lot easier then, because you're not struggling inside yourself. Because normally what happens is this conflict. I don't want to go. So there's aversion in your mind, but then you feel guilty. Oh, I must go. I might get criticized. So then there's all this conflict inside you, and you wear it. People can see it. So you just leave that alone. Be there and just decide 3 hours and your mind for 3 hours, and then you're out of there. And suddenly you'll feel lighter. You'll appear more pleasant. You'll be more easygoing. You'll crack jokes, and you'll let people have whatever opinions they want. This is the best piece of advice, I tell you. Now, the fact is, let's say you can't do that. Let's say you've been abused by your grandpa, and he's going to be there, and you haven't learned to deal with it yet. Well, you don't go. But you've got to be grown up and take responsibility. You've got to decide you can't handle it. You don't blame them, and you don't. But said this brings us to guilt, and it's another whole kettle of fish, isn't it? This is what drives us in families: is guilt. And why guilt? You listen to it. It's because you won't get other people's approval. You think I'm a bad person. Oh no, I can't not go. They'll get upset. We'll say. What you really mean is, oh, I can't not go. They will criticize me. But we internalize that and call it guilt. So then we have, again, this conflict inside us. On the one hand, you don't want to go. On the one hand, you're too scared to say no because you don't want to be criticized. And then you go and you're miserable anyway, and you still fight with your sister. So we've got to be kind of grown up, you know, we've got to be brave and make clear decisions. This is like, you know, if you go to AA and you've given up alcohol and you know that there'll be alcohol at the party, everybody understands and you know it's sensible not to go because it's danger. Alcohol's, you know, red flag. So you don't go. And people understand, oh yeah, Robina's still giving up alcohol. It's best she doesn't come. People will understand. This one they mightn't understand, you know, Robina hasn't forgiven her father yet, so she can't come. No, that's too difficult. But we've got to be brave and make our decisions. So if you can leave yourself at the door and just be there for others, suddenly it's like a release, I tell you. But the trouble is we bring this big fat I with us with all our own little needs and wanting, you know, upset with grandma and upset with the sister and knowing there's going to be a fight with this one. Then of course it's just danger. It's total danger. This is the bodhisattva wing. This is the compassion wing, you know, just be there for others. It's not, you've got to decide in advance. You've got to decide. Lama Zopa says everything exists on the tip of the wish. You think, I will do this, this, and this, and then you'll do it. If you don't decide, you'll just fall into the traps, you know. That's one approach. Now, I think I want you to ask me some questions. Come on, it's much better. Ask me questions. Ask me questions. Come on, petals, ask me questions. Any old question.
Venerable Robina, I have a question.
Yeah, darling.
What happens if you make that first decision and you think, okay, I'm going to be there for them, and everything's traveling along great, and then someone says something or something happens, and you lose that control?
Of course, it's very possible. That's fine.
What
very possible. Well, I mean, depends. You just killed your father a bit late, you know. If you just shouted at him, then I mean, once it's a point, until we're highly real, and I'm talking about realized in terms of disciplined behavior. You know, we all know, and this is a really good point. This is a good point to remember now. We tend to think this is me, you know, and a big lump of me walks in the door and a big lump of grandfather is over there or something. But actually, when we look at the Buddhist practice, according to the Lam Rim, the way Buddhist practice is structured is really marvelous. But we don't kind of join the dots initially. The very first, the essence for Buddha is the mind. You really become a Buddhist. You really begin to, you know, do what being means is when you start to see your mind, identify attachment, identify anger, identify love, identify compassion, and make decisions about it and be your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe very sweetly puts it. It's a serious full-on job. That's when you actually start being a Buddhist. Before that, though, and this is the big point, the very first level of practice, don't worry about your mind yet, just control the servants of your mind, your body and your speech. So most of us, we don't go around killing and raping our family. We don't go around mostly, but it's, guess what? It's the speech. This is so profound, you know, but we don't even think of it in our culture. We just kind of go, blur, you know, I'm me and I can say and do what I like. We're so ridiculous. So the speech is what gets us into trouble. Indeed, some people also do kill and rape each other, but, you know, most of us here maybe don't do that. Aren't we fortunate? But it's the speech. We don't even consider speech as something in particular, but this is a major practice. So the fact is, it's your speech. Suddenly your father says something and it's a red rag to a bull, and you forget your decision, and out come the words. But this is the thing to remember. Our problem in our culture is we don't notice what's going on in our mind until it gets to the level of speech and behavior. We don't notice we're attached until the hand shoves the cake down the throat, you know. Oh, I just ate the cake. What happened? Because we're not conscious of the thoughts in our mind deep, deep down, the thoughts that underpin our feelings and emotions, because we experience feelings and emotions. That's when the body is involved, when you feel it in your body. But that's just like the tip of the iceberg. This is why merely controlling the body and speech is already a profound practice. So, you know, the trouble is, as I said, it's like you don't, you know, it's like you've never, I say this example often, but please hear it. It's like you've never heard of car mechanics. You've got a brand new car and you drive it and drive it and drive it. You don't pay attention. You don't listen for anything. You never notice any of the wobbles of the wheels. You don't notice the brakes crunching. You don't notice the things going a bit berserk. And suddenly on the freeway at 120 k's an hour, the wheels start falling off, and then you notice, oh, the wheels are falling off. What will I do? Well, it's laughable to ask that question at that point, isn't it? And we get this. We all know there's a thing called car mechanics. We know you observe the problems well before the wheels fall off. And then most people's wheels do not fall off on the freeway because we have mechanics. But we don't have mechanics for our mind. We don't even think there's a method for noticing the wheels wobbling. We only notice when you're vomiting the words out the mouth. That's the wheels falling off. And basically the answer is it's too late. You've done the words, Jason. So the question isn't what happens if I vomit the words out, because that's like the wheels falling off. It's to catch it before it gets to your mouth. That's why we have to have this work of every day doing a practice. Even if it's boring old watching your breath for 5 minutes, you're focusing on your breath. But what you're learning to do is step out of your head, because while you're watching your breath, your thoughts are going like crazy. You're not paying attention to them, but you can't help notice them. So you bring this skill to bear in daily life. Then when you're washing the dishes and you're with your hubby and you hear the thoughts, but they're manageable. It's the wheels only wobbling. It's manageable. So then they won't ever get to the point where they vomit out. So that's already the question's too late, Jason. That's the real point. It's the wheels falling off. You've got to start. And if you do, damage control is the best you can do once the wheels are falling off. This is a really powerful point, and we don't think like this in our culture. You think about it. If you just start in the daytime, you're washing the dishes and you're doing different things and suddenly get a bit annoyed about something that went wrong. Annoyed is a polite way of saying anger. It's mild anger, and it's a response when your attachment doesn't get what it wants. But because it's only mild, it's the wheels just wobbling, we don't think it matters. We know if it's your car, you'll rush off to the mechanic and get it fixed. You'll have preventative. But we don't have preventative for our minds. We only have, so we wait. If you go to your therapist at that point and say, oh, listen, I just got a bit annoyed today. Can you give me some methods? She will laugh at you and say, you don't have a problem. Go back home and wait till you want to kill your husband. Then come and see me. That's insane. The mechanic doesn't say to you, come back when your wheels fall off. That's insane. We have preventative. This is a serious point. And this is the real point about the use of Buddhist methodology. We talk about mindfulness and watching our breath and being calm. And it's too superficial to think it's like that. What you're trying to do is, even for 5 minutes, is attempt to get out of your head, attempt to watch your breath, to focus on one particular thing, let's say the breath, let's say. You're not stopping the thoughts. The job isn't to try to stop the thoughts. That's the biggest misconception. Your job is to not engage in the thoughts, but to observe the breath, and out of the corner of your mind, you hear them. So in your daily life, you bring to bear that skill. And there you are washing the dishes and you see yourself get annoyed because you're noticing your mind, not just the dishes. You're noticing your mind, not just your hubby. And then you are, because the wheels are just wobbling, not screaming off, you can manage it. You can be your own therapist and argue with those thoughts. And because they're small, you can dissipate them. But when it's raging out of your mouth, too late. Damage control is the best you can do. I swear to you, this analogy is simple, but it is really profound. And of course, it takes time. It takes time because we never notice the thoughts because we're so addicted to looking at the outside. We only notice the thoughts when they're screaming, when they become emotional and the body's shaking, and the words are vomiting. Too late, too late, too late. So we have to practice seeing the mind at the deeper level, which is the conceptual stories that underpin the emotions. This is when we really seriously start to practice, And then we can manage our lives, because you can manage the thoughts before you're crazy. You can have a car that's 50 years old that will never have its wheels fall off because you've got decent mechanics. Same here. This is not how we think in our culture with psychology. We're kind of like drama queens in our psychology. We have to wait till serious things happen. It's just craziness. It's just plain ridiculous. So that's my answer, Jason. Okay.
I've got a question.
Yes, Matt. Go, darling. Talk to me.
So if you have sought to create peace with an abuser who isn't aware that they are abusive, they deny it and don't know, and they are actively making war, is it wise to implement an estrangement? And also, how do you know if that's ego or wisdom to do so?
Okay, good, Matt. Well, there's two things there. First of all, the first one, this is the key point, Matt. And this is the key, the very specific approach in Buddhism, and this is quite unique to the Buddhist approach about the mind. You know, in our modern psychology and the philosophical materialist views and neuroscientific views and psychological views, we don't have a concept, do we, of negative and positive states of mind. That sounds so judgmental to us. We can't stand it, you know. But this is the Buddhist analysis, and we've got to understand what he means by that. And once we understand it, it's a revelation. So we've got all these millions of thoughts and feelings and emotions, and Buddha basically divides them into 3 categories. There's no 4th category for these thousands of states of mind. One is I-based, fear-based, neurotic, delusional, disturbing, distressing, as many words as you like, states of mind that have this, you know, that are the source of our pain, and they are the delusions. They are attachment and anger and jealousy. Buddha uses simple terminology, not ADID and HD and bipolar and schizophrenia, all these Greek words. No, Buddha hasn't changed his language in 2,500 years, and that even came from the Indians before him. That's the terminology they use for their analysis and their way of seeing the mind. So we've got these neurotic, I-based, fear, the voices of ego, basically, Buddha's analysis. Then you've got the virtuous ones, love, compassion, kindness, generosity. And when we begin to understand first, even theoretically, the difference between these 2 types of states of mind, already that is a revelation. Then slowly the job is to identify them, Matt. That's his exact question. How do you know whether it's ego or coming from wisdom? That comes, you know, how do you, Matt, how do you know, you know, this is exactly the same point. How do you know if there are, you know, the difference between, you know, healthy food and not healthy food? You can't see by looking. You've got to learn nutrition, Matt. It's not just mystical. You don't just get an intuitive feeling, oh, that food looks like it's healthy. You have to know nutrition. You have to know what's in the food. You have to have some knowledge, intellectual knowledge first. Then you have a basis for deciding, don't you? It's exactly the same here, Matt. You first have to hear the Buddhist view. What are the characteristics of the neuroses? What are the characteristics of the virtues? They are very different states of mind. But the tragedy is, like with food, the sugar is completely mixed with the good food, and you can't tell the difference. So you first have to have the theory. It's not enough just to be intuitive about it. So when you know that the delusions are neurotic, they're like totally I-based, they're fear-based, they're panic-stricken, they're delusional because they're so tight and intensive, and they cause you to not see the thing clearly. Then you've got the virtuous states of mind, which are more reasonable, more kind of spacious. They're connected to others, and they've got some level of clarity about them. But so, for example, love and attachment are completely mixed together for us, and we can't tell the difference. The miracle is when we learn to tell the difference, Matt. So once you can learn, even go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, like my in my situation, I have sought to make peace, and in fact,
That's
estrangement is peace, which feels
no, I know.
incredibly
I'm going to get to the
spacious.
second part. Matt, I'm still talking about the first bit. I'm going to get to that part. I'm answering your second part of your question first. Once you've got that clear, Matt, once you've got it clear theoretically, well, I know there's attachment inside me, and there's anger inside me, and there's all these unhappy parts of you, all tight and restricted, but you know you've got wisdom and clarity and kindness, and you're able to step out of yourself and see. And so then you decide, now the answer to the first part of your question, it's up to what you can handle, Matt. So if you're a bodhisattva, at the level of bodhisattva, you will greet the abuser with a loving, compassionate mind because you've finished the job of ego. But honey child, if you're still in the process of struggling with your own dramas, you be wise and intelligent and you stay away. It's up to what you can. The total answer is what you can handle. That's it.
So if you are, because I kind of don't mind either way, but I know that reconnection from the other person's side only propagates more abuse. Like I'm sort of.
No, wait, I know that, but still, I know what you're saying. I do know, but if you're not capable, doesn't matter. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. If you're not capable of being in the presence of that person and allowing them to say what they like, but you be untouched by it, but you have the opportunity to be loving and kind and grateful, that will still have an impression on their mind. They can't help but hear you say loving thoughts, even though they're resisting it and they continue to be mean and ugly. That's their problem. They're going to be abusive no matter what. So if you aren't able to be in their presence and just love them for who they are and give them a big hug and laugh at them and tell them they're wonderful, because that will help them somewhere deep down. If you can't do that, Don't try. Okay, look, that's the first point. But you don't try to think, well, if my presence will make them angry again. Of course, they're going to be angry anyway, but maybe your presence can also add something useful for them. Don't judge your success by the way they respond. That's their problem and their business. It's all the key to it is what you can handle, and how if your presence can we've talked about this. If you can even with this person just say, I love you, you're great, thank you for being a good grandpa or whatever, that still will go in their mind. They'll hear it. So don't let them behave as they want. Let them be the way they are, darling, and just love them for who they are. If you can do that, then honey child, it's great just to say hello. But if not, if you can't handle it, then don't do it. It's up to what you can handle.
Because I've wanted to send kindness, and then I go, well, that just incites more warfare, and my nature is to want to send that. Yeah,
I know it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You've still sent it. It's gone in somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right, darling. It's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah. Who else, people? Who else, dearest ones?
Venerable Robina, there's a question here in the chat from Zada. Zada is saying that she's feeling really repugnant towards merrymakers when there's so much devastation in the world. So, for example, her parents' home in the Philippines has been devastated by a typhoon in the last few days, and it's dragging down her and her husband and her kids. So what's her advice?
That's a really good point, isn't it? I mean, that really is a good point, but that can lead to quite a dangerous point where you think, because the world is so much suffering, I've got to be miserable as well. And that's not, being miserable is not helpful to anybody. Being miserable and feeling guilty and feeling depressed and feeling sad doesn't help anybody. So not to feel, so if here you are in another environment where houses aren't falling down and someone invites you for lunch, and they have no idea what's going on in the Philippines because their house is happy. And so then there's nothing wrong with being in that and having happiness. In other words, having a happy mind and enjoying things doesn't contradict having compassion. But thinking that being compassionate means you've got to be miserable as well. I know a friend I know who's a really devoted, political activist, said, I can never be happy as long as everybody else is suffering. Then you just you'll drag yourself to hell. I mean, if you look at the Dalai Lama, I always think of him as a good example, Anybody, if you look at the Tibet, on the one hand, look at the Tibetan situation. It's a classic nightmare of a particular kind. More than 1 million Tibetans have been killed over the last 60 years. The country's completely destroyed. It's been taken over by foreigners. Every day, refugees are coming out of the country. Every day, the Dalai Lama's in Dharamsala and refugees come and he's in tears of compassion. But then you talk to the Dalai Lama next minute, he has a press conference. He's laughing and cracking jokes. So there's no contradiction. It doesn't mean you're being selfish. You're adjusting to whatever's in front of you, So to think that you can't be happy because your family are suffering in Philippines doesn't mean when you go to your friends and your neighbor's party and you all have a drink and laugh, that doesn't mean you're being selfish. But if you can't handle it, that's okay. That's up to you, Zada. Are you seeing my point, sweetheart? You see the point, Zada? It's adjusting to whoever's in front of you. And this is where often it happens, where we get so upset, let's say that the Philippines is an example, and then the people next door are having a party and you get upset. Well, how can you be having fun when my family in the Philippines are suffering? Everybody's suffering everywhere, but we've got to adjust to what's in front of us. Do you understand, darling? And then be kind to the next door neighbors while they're having a fun drink. Be nice to them. Meanwhile, it doesn't mean you haven't got compassion. It doesn't mean that. And then the fact is, if you keep like the Dalai Lama, he's got incredible compassion when there's so much suffering of his own people, but he's able to stay steady and help other people as well. Do you understand, Zana?
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. Yes. Who else, people? Other people. Questions. These are so helpful questions. Questions are always the best, everything comes out in the questions. What else, people? Nothing else?
Stephanie has asked, since it's Christmas Eve, what would be a nice meditation or offering to do to benefit others?
A meditation, okay. Well, meditation, that's a good point. Let's think about meditation and how it does help others. Because sometimes we think of meditation just helps us. And in one sense, it's true. For example, okay, good. For example, let's say, every Saturday now for 24 hours for the last 2 years, since COVID started, Lama's asked monks and nuns around the world to lead, do 30-minute sessions of leading this compassion meditation, So you think on the one hand, well, what's the point of sitting there with your eyes closed, visualizing Chen Raising and saying Om Mani Padme Hum? How can that help others, you think, Well, I think there's two things. One is, first of all, if I sit there, it's sort of like, if I want to help people with nutrition, which is there's two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. So if I want to help people with nutrition, I've got to go out there and help sick people get healthy. That's the actual helping. But then then I see you sitting there, you're learning nutrition, and I see you studying nutrition, reading all your books about nutrition. And I say to you, well, how selfish you are looking in those books. Why aren't you out there helping people? And you'll say, but Robina, I have to get the wisdom wing. I've got to learn nutrition. So by sitting there reading your books about nutrition, it looks like you're being very selfish, just reading your books, but you're training yourself to know how to help others. That's what meditation does. You sit there doing a meditation, visualizing all the suffering people, imagining Chen Raising sending light out to heal all the people, saying the mantra. Of course, it's just you, but you're training yourself to be compassionate so that when you open your eyes, you're able to help others. That's the way meditation works. So any meditation, at that moment, it won't help others, unless, of course, you're a highly evolved being. If you're really powerful in your mind and very advanced, your mind can benefit others because you're so powerful, That's no question. But we've got to start somewhere. Because if you by doing a compassion meditation, visualizing all the suffering people, imagining light coming from Chen Raising, blessing all the suffering people, it's not happening. It's just your mind, but it's very powerful because you're training yourself. And the second one, I remember back in the 70s when I first started wanting something spiritual again after being a political activist for about 10 years. And I started doing transcendental meditation. And I remember, get a little mantra, right? And I remember they'd done all the research back then that a certain percentage of people in one area all saying something like a mantra or doing something like a meditation, it affected that area. I think that really makes sense. I mean, think about it. If you're in a room full of people, not even being religious, if you're a room full of people and you walk in the room and you'll say, oh, so such a lovely feeling in here, then look what happens when somebody starts to fight. Look what happens when somebody starts to fight in that room. We say we can cut it with a knife, even though it's people's minds and they're not saying a word, they won't be quiet. You walk in the room and they stop the fight and you can feel it, you cut it like a knife because their minds are full of anger. So if 50 people in a room are all angry, look at the effect it has on the other 50 people. Look if people are peaceful together, it affects. So really what even the mind does affect the people around. I think we can prove that. So even though your meditation is only you meditating on compassion every day, one, helps you become more compassionate so you can be a benefit, but two, it has to have an effect on you. I think that makes sense. So especially compassion, compassion is the one, but remember compassion is another extra point now. It's a different point. Compassion, we often think of compassion in our culture as something very sentimental and kind of a bit sort of soft. But compassion, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, compassion is not enough. We need wisdom. So now what's wisdom? Let's use Matt's example. He wants to be compassionate to this person, but he thinks that every time he's there, the person just keeps being abusive. So he's not helping him, he thinks. But what I'm getting at also is the wisdom side is you being more, clarity is what wisdom is. When you are more clear, when you've lessened your attachment, your fears, your delusions, your neuroses, and have grown your wisdom and your clarity and your kindness, you are much more powerful in your ability to be compassionate and to even make the right decision to know how to be beneficial to that person. So like I just suggested, one approach is don't go near them, let them be. But the other one might be to see them and let them keep being abusive. That's okay. That could be wisdom, because compassion isn't just sentimental. And the other one about compassion, of course, and this is again Matt's example, this person who's being abusive, when you really know your own mind, which is the wisdom wing, and you see the pain that your attachment and your jealousy and your anger caused you, we miss this step, I tell you, then you'll start to see the outside world and go, oh my God, look at that grumpy old mother or father or grandpa or auntie. You think they're abusing you, and this is Matt's point, they're abusing themselves. It's so clear, when you can really have that level of compassion, when you really can see that the person who does the harm is the one who's suffering most, then your compassion is more wise. It's not just like, oh, the poor thing can't help it and pat him on the head. No, compassion can be it's like tough love. If you're a really good parent, parents, if you mainly follow attachment, you're a disaster area. You're just weak. You're completely weak and the child can manipulate you. But if you've got wise compassion, you will have tough love and you'll be able to show a firm aspect. I've told you, no more chocolate. You go to your room. They think you're angry with them, but you're not angry. That's real compassion because it's for that person's benefit. So Matt, if you can think that way, even if the person's still shouting and yelling and you can handle it, know that your presence, even saying loving words, it cannot go astray. It can help break down their anger, their resentment, their pride, and all the rest, It's okay, So we've got to be wise. Compassion on its own is not some sentimental rubbish, and this is very powerful. It's tough love, basically. And that means it's got to be for the benefit of the other, Matt. So again, if you can't handle it because you're still fragile, then fine, stay away. But if you can handle it, then definitely your presence can help. In one way or another, that can help break down their pain and their anger and know that that's the person who's suffering. That's the person who's suffering. But that takes time because if you've been abused by somebody, that's why commonest one is we think, oh, I've got to forgive them. Well, forgiveness is much more advanced. You've first got to deal with your own pain. You've got to deal with your own anger and know that you're suffering because of your anger, your attachment, your hurt. When you can heal yourself, then you can forgive the other person. Forgiveness is more advanced. You've got to learn to deal with your own self first. Get rid of your own guilt, in a sense, forgive yourself first. Get past your own pain. Then it's easy to forgive somebody else because then you realize that they're suffering too. Whereas if you've been abused, it's hard to see this other person is suffering. It's too soon to think of that. You've got to heal yourself first. This is a really big point, I tell you. That's the wisdom wing, putting yourself together first. Then it's easy to see the other person suffering, What else, darling people? Anything else? Any points to bring up? Yes, no, sweetheart, talk to me.
Yes, Venerable. What you're saying about the forgiveness of yourself when you've been abused. What about if you've been an abuser yourself? What you should do in that
Exactly,
kind of situation?
A very good point. A very good point, darling. It's a very, very good point. This is where this marvelous practice we know, called it's called the purification practice, the end of the day. And this is something we really, really, really miss. And I've been saying it a bit already. The first step is called regret. So the commonest one we think of when we regret having done something to harm, let's say you cheated on your boyfriend, just say you cheated on your boyfriend. So you've harmed somebody else. So what we tend to think of as regret when we first do it, I regret doing that. What it feels like to us is guilt. The conclusion we come to is I'm a bad person. This is a very deep instinct. This is the commonest one, and this is what can destroy people, but it's not guilt. And we have to actively work on this. And this is why the first point, regret means you speak out regret. I did cheat on my boyfriend and I regret having done that because, this is the first step, because look at the suffering it causes me. We feel guilty about even saying those thoughts, but this is the fundamental starting point. Buddha's simple point is that everything we think and do and say leaves an impression first in our mind. So try and think of your own mind. Think of you in one day. Let's say you're angry, you're jealous, you're resentful, you're angry, you want to harm somebody. Forget about the harm you do to the other person. This is why regret is the first step. You've got to not even involve the other person yet. We've got to see, the harm that you've done to yourself by lying, cheating. You understand? That's poisoning your mind. And this is the part we miss in our culture completely. We think it sounds selfish, but if you don't do this step, you can't do anything else. You've got to first recognize that your cheating, your anger, your lying, your jealousy, your rage absolutely destroys you. and you regret it from the depths of your heart. You speak it like this: I did cheat on my boyfriend. I did kill my brother. I did whatever you did. And I am sick of this suffering. I'm sick of this habit. And then if you have the view of karma, I do not want to sow these seeds in my mind that will ripen as the person I create. Because basically Buddha says we create the person we become. Every single second of what we think and do and say in a day is producing the person we become tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So when we realize we create ourselves, who wants to create an angry, cheating, lying person? Who wants to become an angry, cheating, lying person? It's like mental illness to think you want to become that way, but we are so disconnected in our psychology. We think we don't realize we're harming ourselves. We only think of the guilt and the shame, what I've done to somebody else. But you've got to, it's like this first step is like having compassion for yourself. You've got to see that harm that it causes you and have sincere regret because you are sick of the suffering that these habits cause you. It's a really powerful step, which we always miss. When you can have that, then you go to the next one and you think, in this process of purification, well, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? I've just poisoned myself. I've just eaten poison, basically. I've got to recognize I've eaten poison and I don't want the future suffering. So I've got to find a doctor. Well, here the Buddha's our doctor. He doesn't think, and this is the second point that is so powerful. If I'm a good Catholic, as I was once, then because by definition, for a Catholic, a Christian, and I always quote this, I asked my Jesuit priest friend, what defines something as a sin, as a bad action? He said, it's a bad action is bad because God said not to do it. So by disobeying God, that's when you could make a sin. So that's a very powerful concept. Now, Buddha, like Jesus, says, don't kill, don't cheat on your boyfriend. He says the same things, but you've got to ask Buddha why he suggests. Jesus says, don't kill. Why Jesus? Because God said. Good enough, nothing wrong if God is the creator, nothing wrong with that view. But the Buddha's not a creator. He's a good doctor. He has found that eating sugar will cause you diabetes. So your doctor doesn't say to you, don't eat sugar because I say so. And you get diabetes and that's called punishment by your doctor. Buddha says that's superstition. So the doctor says, don't eat sugar. And you say, why not? Well, because sweetheart, it'll cause you diabetes. So that's the Buddha's advice. Don't be angry, he says. Don't kill, don't steal, because it breaks your heart. It hurts you and produces a crummy person. So it's your benefit. Then the next step is now you have compassion. Now you think, I regret for the sake of the other person. I regret because I've caused my boyfriend suffering. And now that's called compassion. But you've got to have the compassion for yourself first, which is what regret means. I can't stress this point enough. Then you have compassion. Then you do the purification practice, and then you make a decision not to do it again. That's what the purification practice is. It's very logical psychology. Are we communicating? Now, the extra point, darling, the extra point is this. You see, our thing is we want forgiveness. This is a very interesting point. This comes from the Christian teachings. I'm not complaining about it. God, by you doing what God said not to do, you commit a sin, then you must ask God to forgive you. That is the purification in Christianity. God has to forgive you. Then you're purified. Well, for the Buddha, I'm not being rude, that's like going to your doctor, confessing that you've eaten sugar and say, please forgive me. And her forgiveness purifies your diabetes. We know it's not like that. Are you hearing my point? So the Buddha's more like the doctor who's wise, has discovered from the Buddha's own experience that anger, killing, stealing harm you and produce a suffering person. And so that he gives you methods to heal yourself. That's the role of the Buddha, like the doctor. So the doctor says, I've found from my experience that eating too much sugar causes you to get diabetes. So don't eat sugar because that's the reason. So she gives you the methods to purify yourself. And so you regret eating sugar because you don't want the future suffering. You then do the practice and then you vow not to eat sugar again. Except the added component here is the compassion one. So it's a really logical series of steps psychologically. It's very powerful. And so forgiveness is fine. But our problem is with guilt, we feel I am a bad person and I'm only going to feel better when the person forgives me. But what if they don't forgive you, Nana? What if they don't forgive you? That's the tragedy. Then you always feel you're a bad person. But even if they don't forgive you, you can still heal yourself. Forgiveness is like a bonus, but it doesn't get us off the hook. You get my point? It's really profound. We have to understand these steps. But ego is dualistic and ridiculous and wants forgiveness and wants to be got off the hook, wants someone else to make me feel better. And it's like a baby. Do you understand, darling? My friends in prison who kill people, they can't get forgiveness. The person's dead, you know. But when they've heard about the purification practice, that you can heal yourself, then this is a revelation, because you know, forgiveness is marvelous. It really makes us feel better. But also I want to say this part, we misuse forgiveness. Let's say let's say you're my friend and we meet for dinner on Thursdays at 6 o'clock, and every week I'm late. Every week I'm late, you know, and every week I ring you up. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And you say, yeah, all right, I still love you, Robina. You're not helping me at all. You're making me feel better. I'm using you to make me feel better and get me off the hook. If you're really my friend, you'll say, Robina, I'm happy to forgive you, but you better make a decision to change, honey. It's your responsibility. And then you might even eventually say, I can't meet you anymore. So forgiving each other in relationships can be misused. I mean, I get you to forgive me to make me feel better. I've got to change. And if I don't decide to change, then you shouldn't forgive me. You should say, I'll forgive you if you change. But we're like children with this. We kind of misuse each other. So these are very powerful points, you know. You understand? We're communicating? Good, darling. And the thing is, if you haven't forgiven yourself first, you can't really have real compassion for the other person, you know. And if you ask for forgiveness is amazing, or to give forgiveness, either way, it's fantastic. But it's got to be very sincere. It's got to be coming. You got to see the logic of it. You've got to really think this stuff through, not just take it superficially. This is my point. You know? Well, this is a minefield, I tell you. We've got to really look at what we think and why we think it. You know, it's very important. What else, darling people? What else, sweethearts?
Venerable Robina, we've just got 9 minutes left, but there's a couple more questions here.
Good. Good.
There's a question here from Chris. So Chris is asking, how can I distance myself from how I feel when I perceive others to be criticizing me so that I can keep being positive, especially over the holidays?
I understand, darling. I mean, okay, the thing is, if you're with a group of people where it's a bit volatile and someone's being mean to you, at least, this is the point why at least don't say the words. You can't necessarily, you can't, maybe you're still going to feel the hurt and you maybe have to leave it until you're on your own to deal with it. You can't deal, if you're still very vulnerable to somebody's criticism, you can't heal the feeling immediately, but at least you zip the lip. I cannot stress this enough. But if you act from that hurt and then the words vomit out your mouth and the damage is done, and at least you don't say the words. You try your best, but you can't deal with the pain right then because you've got to be on your own. So you just let it be there, feel the hurt, don't say the words, and then go home and have a little weep and work it through. It really is. It needs to be very clear like this, because the words are the worst thing is the words. The danger is when you say the words coming from the hurt. Then once you've said it, it's done. You can't change it, So I think if you can't handle the pain at that moment, you leave it there and try and work with it. Leave it there, just leave it there. Try not to respond. This is the most powerful. Do your best, That's all I can say. Do you understand, people? What else is there, darling? What else is there, Amy?
Just one more question from Declan. So Declan was asking, Venerable Robina, please let us know your favorite thing to do over Christmas and how you spend the holidays.
Well, holidays for me is always around my birthday. My birthday was the 20th and I turned 77 on December the 20th. So I was in Rome with some friends. So we had what did I do on my birthday? Oh yeah, I was at a hotel. They gave me a cake. It was a happy birthday written on it. Then, thank you, Declan. So then also, I think Christmas, I'm in France now. I've come to Institut Vajrayogini near Toulouse and we're going to have lunch. They're having Christmas lunch today. Because there's a group of people here for like years doing nyungnes, these fasting retreats, and their eating day is today, not tomorrow. So we're having Christmas lunch today. So I'm having Christmas lunch, really. Wherever I go, it depends on the people, That's my answer, Declan. What are you doing for lunch, for Christmas, Declan? Never mind. Okay, that's my answer. Nothing exciting. But I did notice I'm 77. And I did notice I'm getting old, and I do realize I will be dead soon. So I've got to keep having a sense of urgency and not waste this precious life.
Sorry, Robina, you might be able to hear me, and thank you for your
I
answer.
can, darling. I can hear you.
My birthday is coming up on January the 3rd. At the moment, I'm sitting in Margaret River, overlooking the river and right in the forest. And I've just loved your conversation. And I just love the part at the very, very end where those people were fasting. And
Yes.
then, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversations that we've had.
I'm
Thank you.
very happy, Declan. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time at Margaret River. Wonderful. Well done. So, darling people, yeah, we've got, look, 6 more minutes. Come on. What else is there? People. Any old thing. I don't mind. Any old thing. Bring it up. Talk about it. Yes, somebody put their hand up. Where are you? Francis, hello, sweetheart. Talk to me, Francis.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Here we go. I can, sweetheart.
Can you hear me? I dread when my daughter comes at Christmas, and I'm trying to
Start again. Start again, darling. I didn't hear you.
Okay,
Start again.
My daughter is arriving on Boxing Day, and we've had this relationship for years where it's we can only go for about a day without an argument.
Yes.
And so instead of looking forward to it, I'm dreading it. My stomach's in
Yes.
knots.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm listening to all of the stuff about zip the lip and all of that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But she doesn't function on people in her company zipping their lips. She likes a good going.
I understand. I understand.
And so I'm trying to spend tomorrow enjoying myself with the rest of the family. But I really would like to do some sort of preparation, just to say,
I think you can't, you know, if she likes to, she likes to fight with you. She says, so who, I mean, in a sense, who starts the fights, you or her?
Her.
You know? So then, darling, have you ever tried not answering? Have you ever tried just, you know, I mean, is it she is with other people or is it just her?
It's just our family, so her brother will be here.
So it's not just her. There's another group of people there.
Yeah.
Well, then, darling, the piece of advice I've given you, you have to practice it. You just decide you're not going to fight with her. You've got to decide, Francis. You know, your point was very telling. You said she doesn't function like that. Francis, that's her problem.
Got it.
You've got to separate yourself from her and you've got to make a decision. And you don't care if she sits there and has a tantrum. Let her do what she likes, Francis. You are not responsible for her. You decide. You will not say negative words. You will not be hooked by her. This is the most powerful practice. It will infuriate her probably. Let her be infuriated, Francis. Don't be passive aggressive about it. Don't do it, but you've got to make a decision in advance. You've got to decide strongly and you vow to yourself, I will not respond. And because you've got a group of people there, it's easy to ignore it. If it were just her, it would be very hard. But you can ignore her, Francis. I mean, that's the power you have to have. And you will be, and when you're successful, you will feel so pleased with yourself.
Well, I'm looking forward
to that. You've got to make a decision, darling. This is what we began with, and I'm going to end with this. You've got to make the decision beforehand. Strongly say the words, I will vow for that period, 10 hours, 12 hours. I'm going to watch my speech like a hawk. I will say no negative words. I will not be hooked. You've got to decide it, Francis.
I've decided right now. Thank you, Robina.
And you decided again in the morning before you wake up. And when you wake up, you decide it and you make a firm decision and know that you will be able to do it and focus on everything else. Don't be passive aggressive with it. Do it because you know you'll feel so much better when you succeed. Okay.
I feel better even hearing it, and I'm going to make that resolution. Thank you.
Be brave. Yes. Hello, Alicia. Yes, darling.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi from Canada.
Good.
I would like to learn more about the Buddha, and I'm wondering if you could suggest to me, is there something I could read or things I could get to learn more?
Darling girl, there's so much published these days. I mean, there's unbelievable, there's a huge amount.
Okay.
Let me think. So there's, well, you know, you said you want to learn more about the Buddha. There are wonderful books published about the Buddha. If you want the Buddha specifically, there are wonderful biographies and things. But I mean, if you want more about the Buddhist teachings, I think you can't go wrong but to read some of the Dalai Lama's books. He's a really good start. He's probably one of the best exponents of Buddhism on the planet, you know, and he's very well known. So I think and there's lots of books. Either his books are much more technical or they're more kind of easygoing. So really there's hundreds of his books published. So I think starting with the Dalai Lama, you can't go wrong. Does that sound like a reasonable answer to start with?
That's where I'll start. Thank you so
Good,
much.
darling. Good, sweetheart. Thank you for that. Well,
I
Petals,
appreciate you.
Good, darling. Pleasure, pleasure. But also, you can also there's so many teachings these days on Zoom. You know, you can always, if you like certain people, you can go online and check different people out. I mean, I know that, you know, I know that the center I live with in Santa Fe, they've got many teachings and meditations every day. And some of them might suit the Australian. Where are you? What country are you living in?
I'm in Canada.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yes. So then, you know, that would be perfect for you. I'm not there now. I'm in France, but Santa Fe Center has about 3 or 4 or 5 events every day, including a morning meditation at 7 every morning of the week, a 30-minute express meditation. There's a purification meditation in the evenings at 9 p.m. Santa Fe time, and there's different teachings or different levels. You know, I mean, there's one that I do. We call it "Be Your Own Therapist," which is a bit like this. We do an hour and we just talk and discuss. So those kind of things would be very helpful to be involved with as well. So maybe. You know, and maybe Jason and Amy might be having some classes, getting more classes eventually. I don't know. But Jason and Amy can give you the website of that center, and you'll see lots of different people teaching, lots of different Western teachers. So that could be very handy as well. Okay.
Thank you. I
Good,
will.
sweetheart.
That sounds so
Good.
interesting. I will check
Good.
it out.
Good, darling. Wonderful.
Thank
Well,
you.
Petals, it must be what time in Sydney? You're 9 p.m.
Venerable Robina, there is one more question from Dave.
Yes.
We have
Dave, talk to me, darling. Yes, talk to me,
Yeah.
Dave.
Hi, Venerable Robina. Thanks for the teaching tonight.
Sure.
I really enjoyed it.
Sure.
COVID's going to be with us for a very, very long time, as we all know.
Seems like it.
I'm just
Yes.
wondering, as you're now in France, are you going to be over at Kopan, or are your travels going to be going your Indian tour or the Lawudo?
I understand.
Is
No,
that
this
gonna be
year it's
coming
just
back?
just 3 months in Europe. And then I think we've got planned, I don't know if we can do it, we'll see, October next year, we're going to do one of our treks to Lama Zopa's cave up in the mountains, you know, near. So as long as things go well, that's the next one. I mean, usually we do this pilgrimage every year to India and Nepal, but we haven't done that for 2 years. And I don't know when we'll do the next one. But I'll probably, for sure, I'll be in the East. Not at Kopan, I don't think, but October, but it could be, depends on what happens. October next year, yeah.
All right. Okay. I shall watch carefully.
Good, Dave.
All right. Thanks then.
Thank you so much. Well, darling people, everybody, so happy to see you all. And I just, food for thought and never give up. And really, I can't stress enough to zip the lip. I swear, so much good comes from it. You'll feel happy yourself that you succeeded. I swear to you. Okay. All right, darlings. Much love. John Trog, Semtrog. Rinpoche Makye Panam Kye Guchi Kye Panyampa Mepa Yanggong Negondu Pelba Shog. Let's make bodhicitta, make compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all. And never give up, people. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Thank you, darlings, so much.
Thank you,
so
Venerable
much.
Robina. There are many.
Much love, everybody.
Namka,
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you so much.
Really long time.
Thank you
very
much.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.